It's story time. Chapter 1. The Grand Midway Hotel.
My name is Brian J. Cano. I'm a paranormal investigator for the past 18 years, and I spend most of my off non-professional hours crawling around in the dark, just looking for answers, and it's led me to some pretty interesting places.
Brian is a fellow panelist on Paranormal Caught on Camera on the Travel Channel and a paranormal investigator, an unexpected career choice.
You know, it wasn't so much of a conscious choice, of just something that I kind of fell into. Now, when I was a kid, I believed in everything. And I think when you're a kid, that's just your default state. You believe in everything. Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy, what have you. And as you get older, you start to lose these things. And for a long time, I found myself, and around college age, I found myself a huge skeptic, to the point where I didn't believe in anything. I had a crisis of faith going on. I was raised Catholic, but I'm non-practicing these days. And it wasn't really one thing that turned it all around. It literally was that the cable access show I started doing with some friends, and on it, I was the skeptic. And it was my job to try and find a rational, logical explanation for the things that were going on, for the things that were reported. And over time, every experience, every adventure, every little thing that I looked into and adventure I went on gave me a little bit more, I call it a grain of sand. By itself, it's inconsequential. It doesn't seem like much. You look at it, you throw it to the ground. And enough time goes on, you look down, and you find yourself standing on a beach. And when I looked down and saw the beach that I was standing on, I had to really consider what that meant for me. And that pulled me away from being the hardcore skeptic to something quite in the middle. I consider myself a skeptical believer these days because I know the activity is out there. I know the phenomenon is real. It's the people who report it that I'm skeptical of. I've actually had to sit down recently and sort of categorize these because I'm in the process right now of editing my first book. And in this book, each chapter is an anecdotal experience about something that I've been through related to the paranormal that even if I didn't recognize it at the time, it taught me something. The one that I always go back to over and over and over, whether the question is, what is your craziest experience? What was your scariest experience? Have you ever had a demonic encounter? The one place that I went to that checks all those boxes is a place called the Grand Midway Hotel in Windber, Pennsylvania. This place, to describe it in a nutshell, imagine the Munsters meets the Addams Family meets Ripley's Believe It or Not. This place, I can't even describe it accurately. You'd have to go there and still you'd be like, wow, this place is insane. It was a hotel, and back in the early days, in the 1800s, it was very integral to the mining industry in the town. That's where all the miners would come and stay. They would mine the mountains, and then they would stay at the hotel. And the legend goes, they would get workers from Europe, and they would invite them to the States. They would say, come to the States, work in the mines. You can eventually bring your families over. We're going to give you this big, huge advance, and we'll even construct you a house to live in. But you got to come and come to America. So they did. And when they got to Windber, they said, you know about that house? We're not done yet. It's coming. Don't worry about it. But you know what? You can stay in the Grand Midway. That's fine. We have accommodations for you. And, as far as rent goes, we'll just take it out of that advance that we gave you. So the miners came, and the houses were never built, but through gambling, alcohol, women, they managed to get the money away from each and every one of these miners to the point where they now owed the company. And that song by Paul Robeson, 16 Tons, became a literal truth. They owed their soul to the company's store. And, allegedly, again, the rumors go that people who tried to unionize or speak out against the company would disappear. And there have been many rumors about bodies being buried in the basement of the hotel. Now, that alone seemed to be an amazing tale that would support and create a possible haunting. But that's not that. That's the foundation. That's just the concrete bottom of this tale. The Grand Midway, after the mining industry in the area dried up, it sat abandoned for a number of years. They tried to turn it into different things like a discotheque, a pharmacy, all different types of businesses went in there until once again, they just couldn't find a use for it and it stood abandoned. Enter a man named Blair Murphy. This cat worked out in Hollywood. He was getting fed up with the scene out there. And if you're a Fight Club fan, you'll get this reference. He pulled a Tyler Durden and he decided to move into this dilapidated old building out in the middle of nowhere. He found it on eBay for $11,000. He bought the hotel. It's a 33-room hotel. And he decided, okay, this is where I'm going to be. This is where I'm going to live. And he spent those first 2 years trying to fix it up and renovate it. There was barely any heat, barely any running water. He lived in the vestibule portion of it where the bar was for those first 2 years because he didn't want to venture too far into the hotel because of the things he felt. Now, after he got it up to code and up to living standards, he opened it up as a place where artists could come, creative people, whether you're a poet, a musician, a dancer, a writer. You could come there, live, and just work on your craft. So it became this hub for all this creative energy. And this one particular gentleman moved in. His name was Dylan, and he was a painter. Now, Dylan, as many artists do, struggled with, we'll say, abuse. Substance abuse. So he would like to experiment with certain things, and he would take whatever he saw while he's on these trips and he would paint them. And at first they were just, random fantastic things, but over time he started painting very specific things, very specific places, and eventually specific forms, specific figures, until one figure dominated all of his artwork. And eventually, that figure reached out to him and said, well, this is my name. This is how you can refer to me. Fast forward to 2009, where my group Scared and I went there to do an investigation. Now, by this time, that painter had moved out. He had just had enough. He tried to reform his life, joined the Jehovah's Witnesses, burned most of his paintings. And the room that he lived in was now a skeleton of its former self. All the paintings that had adorned the walls had been taken down, with the exception of one or two. But one of them was a floor-to-ceiling painting of this figure. It was a tall figure, slender, gray skin, maybe 7 feet tall. The way he painted it, it had black, sullen sockets for eyes. In some renditions, it had a horn. And often its hands were glowing as if on fire. Now, when we went there ourselves, our group psychic communed with something that she described the same way. And the way it played out, even though I've been doing this for 18 years, this is the one and only case I've ever done or worked on that involves something potentially demonic. And even though, on the TV shows they like to throw around that word, everything is a demon, I can safely say that, I believe this was legit.
So what is a demonic entity?
Now, I was raised Catholic, so I have all the old teachings in the back of my head about angels and demons, all these things that happened before man came about, and the rebellion against God that, okay, he wanted the angels to bow down to man, and a couple of them said, yeah, we're not doing that, and, sorry, old man, we're not going to follow you, so we're going to go this way. And those angels fell and became demons. Now, I don't know if I necessarily believe that as the definitive description of what happened, but I feel like every religion on our planet has some creation tale and has some pantheon of gods, godlike figures, creatures, and servants of those deities. So, be it a demon, be it a jinn, be it whatever the nomenclature is, I feel there are entities out there that serve that purpose. Now, if you think about the description, tall, slender, gray skin. All right, a lot of people who've reported UFO abductions describe something similar. Perhaps one person's gray alien is another person's demon, and so forth.
This artist had painted this demon that continuously appeared to him, which reminded me of the story Mark told in Season 1, Episode 5, Not of This World, where he tells the story of seeing the inhuman figure that Clive Barker had painted. In both these cases, the figure forces the artist to illustrate them. Why is that? Is it because these demons want to be seen? Recently, I learned about shamanic art and how drawing what you see in the spirit realm is one way of manifesting it in the physical world. Maybe these demons know that. But what do they want with us?
The way it was described to me at this particular place, everything is territory to them. We are territory. A room is territory. If you give them permission to be there, or if you give them permission to enter your body, they're going to take it and then say, what's next? It's a cosmic game of risk where they're going to take as much territory as they can. Now, to what end? What's the goal? Well, again, as was described to me, before mankind came around, these entities were immortal, beautiful beings that had rich lives and amazing intellects and had the entire scope of eternity to live, I guess if you want to describe it religiously, in God's presence, or if we just want to boil it down to spirituality, wherever the source is, whatever the energy is that created things, they had access to that. And when they fell, they did so because they were rebelling against a decree to help us, to follow us, to guide us. And we are the object of that bad decision. So they hate us. Imagine someone who's done something bad to you. We all have our adversaries, our Newmans, like on Seinfeld, that just like, that guy, he's the worst. Imagine that on a cosmic level, on an eternal level, and they just never get over it. And I even asked the question, I said, well, God's a forgiving guy, right? Can't the demons say, we're wrong, we did the wrong thing, we're sorry, we repent? And as it was always taught to me, they can't do that. Angels have far seeing. They can see from the beginning of time to the end of time. They saw the consequences of their actions and still chose to follow Lucifer, to do the wrong thing. And as such, they will never, ever be able to come back into the presence of the Creator. And like I said, right after this adventure happened, the next 2 years just were very, I guess, dark to me, because I'm thinking like, all right, there's demons everywhere. They're taking over places. They're taking over people. Average Joes like me are not equipped to fight them. So, oh my, we're eventually going to lose. This is going to be a zero-sum game on a long enough timeline. And I got really depressed about it until we went back to the Grand Midway on a season 2 episode of Haunted Collector. Now, one of the things that happened that first visit was that we got an EVP in the owner's voice, and the owner wasn't anywhere nearby. He was out. He was working while we were investigating, and spirit can sometimes mimic voices, and that's fine and all. But when we went back with Haunted Collector, John Zaffis also got an EVP in that owner's voice, and I'm thinking, all right, the one I got was on the 3rd floor. That's where the artist's room was. That's where the artist gave permission for this entity to inhabit. John got it on the 2nd floor, and I'm thinking, oh no, it's increasing its territory. It's spreading out. Like what I thought was true, that yes, it is. We can't stop it. And one of the takeaways from that original investigation was that, all right, if there's evil, there's also good. and there's a bounce, fighting it out. And it took me those 2 years to understand that, all right, yeah, all right, if there is a balance, it's not just demons filling the world. Like, okay, yes, there's an unseen evil, but there's also an unseen good. And, whether you want to term them angels or beings of light or whatever we label them, they're out there too. And that made me feel a lot better. It calmed me down.
So, what becomes of those who encounter these demons?
When we were leaving that first weekend, the artist did show up because he heard, there was investigators kicking around in his old room. And meeting him was like meeting a recently recovering addict, because A, that was true with the substance abuse. But as far as the demonic involvement, he said, guys, by any chance, do you have any pictures of my paintings? I really would like to see them again. And I got flashes of, Lord of the Rings when Bilbo asks if he can see his ring again. And I'm like, yeah, sorry, buddy. Yeah, we didn't see anything. Because for him to be exposed to that again would be exposing him again to a danger, to a relapse. And I could tell, I could hear it in his voice. He was jonesing.
These paintings could have possibly been the result of the artist's drug-induced hallucinations, but when Brian and his team investigated the hotel, they gathered proof that it was much more than that.
Our psychic said that when she tried to look at it, it had like a melty face, like its face was melting. So that, again, is a visage that is hard to lock down because it was constantly moving. And she said that anytime she tried to get a good look, it would get behind her. The current skeptic of our group at the time, my buddy Chris, super skeptical. He's like, oh, it's behind you? Okay, well, how about I do this? And he went and stood where the creature supposedly was. And he reported saying anytime he would stand in that spot, he would feel this icy chill going up his spine, as if something was trying to get in or trying to check him out. And this is a guy that really isn't going to connect those dots. He's not going to make something up just for sensational reporting. But he's like, yeah, this happened not once or twice, but like 5 times. The adventure that we had in that room, in that time, this is maybe one day I'll make a movie out of it. But it's one of the chapters in my upcoming book, and it's a crazy story.
For more details of Brian's visit to the Grand Midway Hotel, you'll have to wait for his book, Grains of Sand.